I haven't done these live videos for a while, but I thought I would, instead of recording and editing today's video, I would do a live one. So anyway, here I am, and it's Saturday morning. I think a lot of people have seen in America the interesting political changes that have happened. I'm always cautious about politics. I think Christ's message to me resonates more with me than various political slogans and parties and so forth. But I suppose it's part and parcel of our existence to navigate the political systems that come and go. And over the last few weeks, we've seen interesting changes in the world. And I think the return of Donald Trump has really woken up the media, because Biden wasn't giving all these press conferences, and it seems Trump has is is really woken up the press, because he seems to be doing these press conferences every day. And then we saw JD Vance yesterday in Munich with ending his famous speech quoting Pope John Paul II, "Do not be afraid." But there's one topic over the last 5 years that we haven't been allowed to speak about, which is really the pandemic. Bloggers across the world on this platform were silenced about speaking about the pandemic, about the treatments, about the origin, and so forth. 5 years ago, if you said that the COVID came from a lab, it was conspiracy theorists. It was conspiracy. Today, nobody is saying it's conspiracy. It did come from a lab. You have the Vice President of America saying that. America funded a lab in Wuhan, China, that was experimenting on coronaviruses. I mean, the facts slowly are drip feeding out. And I suppose as time goes on now, with Trump back in office, with Kennedy, with Vance, with all of these others, we will probably soon know the full truth about COVID-19 and so forth. There is a problem here in this whole story now, which is the Pope's involvement in the pandemic. And it's time that we Catholics ask the questions about his involvement in the pandemic. The Pope wrote a letter to US bishops about care for migrants and the Good Samaritan. But as people know, I have friends that work in the Vatican. Lay people that work in the Vatican, clerics that work in the Vatican. I don't talk too much about it, because for obvious reasons. And during COVID-19, they would talk about their struggles with this new regime, especially when they had gotten COVID-19, and yet they were asked to also get vaccinated. And I suppose people couldn't understand how they needed to take this vaccine after they had gotten the illness. It was like this top-down regime. And during COVID, the Pope fired his own employees because they wouldn't get vaccinated. I mean, the news was that it was, they voluntarily resigned. They stepped down. But the reality is they objected to the having to get vaccinated, strongly objected, and the Pope was having none of it. Said, you either take it, you either do this, or you get fired. That's the truth of it. You couldn't get into the Vatican without the COVID cert at the time. They complied to the law with it. And this is problematic for the church because it overstepped its authority. Instead of giving guidance to the world and allowing guidance to Catholics and allowing Catholics to make their own informed decisions, if anybody questioned the regime at the time, you were fired. And it's important to remember there was a Puerto Rican bishop who was relieved of his diocese because of his objection to these vaccines. And people are forgetting all of these incidences that happened during COVID. They're just saying, "Oh no, we can't talk about this." But if we don't talk about this, if we're not allowed to have a free discussion about this in the church, where are we going? On a personal level, I have to disclose my own personal struggles with this during COVID because uh, during that period, two Legionaries of Christ that I knew that would have been the same age as myself, they died of COVID in Mexico. And so, on the one hand, I'm seeing people that I knew die of this illness. On the other hand, I'm seeing, we're all seeing the information, and they were saying, okay, well, we need to make a decision here. And, in Ireland, they were rolling out the vaccines, and my wife, who was slightly older than myself, she signed up. We both signed up to get the vaccines, but it was been rolled up by age. And my wife came home after getting the Moderna. She said, "I'm not feeling well." I said, "Kinga, I know my wife. I'm not feeling well. I'm just not feeling well." And big bruise on her arm, like a big. I said, "That's really strange." I said, "Yeah, no, I'm really not feeling. I'm not feeling well." My brother had gotten the AstraZeneca. He also wasn't feeling well. Like it was really knocking him back, and he never got second shots or anything like that afterwards. Um, then my appointment was coming up to get it, and Kinga was saying to me, my wife, she's saying, "Robert, I don't think you should get it. I don't think you should get it." She wouldn't let the kids get it either. I said, like, really? And we started, having frank conversations, talking about this treatment. Oh, okay, you've got it. Yeah, it was really, there was problems here. But if you spoke about this, oh no, it's conspiracy. Oh no, there's no problems here. There's the side effects are minimal. Uh, and then people started to speak about heart problems, myocarditis, and clottings, and so forth. And like somebody sent me on a WhatsApp, after they got the vaccine, and they showed me, they had gotten clots. And yes, we were not allowed to talk about this thing. You were not allowed to put a post on Facebook about this. It was taken down. Or to do a video on YouTube, it was taken down. Maybe this video is going to be taken down. I don't know, because it may take a while for Google to allow us to have a free and open discussion about what went on. Guys, here, what went on? We were told that there was a moral obligation that you needed to take this treatment so you could stop the spread of it, right? So you weren't caring for your neighbor if you didn't take this treatment, and yet they never did. The European Parliament did an investigation, said, "Pfizer, can you show us the studies where that you did that this treatment stops the transmission of the virus?" Didn't do any. Didn't do any. There were none. It's all there on the record now. It's not Robert conspiracy here. And I suppose that all of this is, concerning when the Pope was meeting with Borla, the CEO of Pfizer, when the Pope was using Vatican property to offer the vaccine, when the Pope was implementing the COVID certs, firing employees, making fun of cardinals who didn't get the vaccine. Remember when Cardinal Burke was in hospital and the Pope belittled him? Oh, and that poor guy, he didn't take the vaccine. Poor him. And now he's in hospital on a respirator. There was various reasons why people weren't taking it. You had its remote connection to abortion. But you also had the fact we don't know. We don't seem to be able to have a discussion, an open, free, honest discussion about this vaccine. We don't seem to be. It's a brand new technology, mRNA technology, a brand new technology where you were given a gene therapy for your body to create a spike protein. And the studies have shown that there are more problems here than we realized. And we weren't allowed to talk about it. We weren't allowed to talk about it, have an open discussion. And I suppose I'm going to ask the question now, 5 years after this, you know, did the church make the right decision? I don't think they did. I don't think the church made the right decision in putting all its eggs in the pharma basket. The Catholic Church became the religious department of Pfizer, of the WHO, of the UN, of Big Pharma. And I'd love to know other people's thoughts and experiences during the pandemic on this. And again, I'm not anti this. As I said, I signed up for the Pfizer vaccine. The only reason I didn't go ahead with it was because of my experience of what my wife experienced. I saw people die of it, people that I knew had died of COVID. So I understood, okay, there's a decision here to be made. It wasn't like I was anti anything, but we weren't allowed to have a free and honest and open discussion and debate and transfer of ideas. When somebody got ill, oh no, that's rare. How rare was it? I see people have started coming in here, and there's 52 of you online. I'd love to know what your thoughts were on this during the pandemic. What was your experience, and to collate this a little bit. But I do think the Pope made a bad call in backing Big Pharma during this pandemic. Because he became their spokesman in effect, and that really is concerning. On the other hand, it will be interesting now over the next couple of months and years what Kennedy and others do expose, and how that will have an impact going forward. Yeah, somebody says being Catholic media here. How are you? And I will never forget what our Irish government did. I was not allowed in a restaurant, and I was refused medical intervention. When I wrote to our local politician, I was told I could eat outside. I'm going to share two experiences about this. In 2021, after I had signed up for the Pfizer vaccine, and then after my wife's problem, I kind of was canceling the appointments. So they send me an appointment, I cancel and cancel and cancel, and I've a kind of a video. I've all this recorded for future reference. So I decided, look, I'm not taking this treatment. End of story. I'm not taking this treatment. Apart from the fact that in 2020. In January, February, March, I had been sick for 3 months with a cold. I'd been really sick, chesty, for 3 months. It was the longest cold I ever had. I was traveling. I was working in Moscow. I was working in Copenhagen. I traveled through Switzerland, through Germany, Dublin airport. So I traveled, spent 3 months in 2020, 2 months in 2020, January, February, traveling across Europe. Sick. I remember being in a meeting in Copenhagen, 2020, chesty cough, taking ibuprofens and all of this. I said, and then in March 2020, I was about to board a flight to Bergamo in Italy, literally to Bergamo in Italy, and the whole media thing came up, and my boss called me and says, you better not go to Italy. There's something happening in Bergamo. So anyway. So, the reality is, COVID just didn't pop up in March 2020. We were sick before that. Well, I was certainly sick for 2 months. I remember being in Moscow and seeing the Chinese tourists wearing masks, and people were beginning to wear masks in airports in January and February of 2020. And I was, as I said, I was sick for 2 months with this kind of malaise or whatever. So in 2021, after my wife didn't want to get the vaccine, I decided, look, uh, I'm not taking it, given what has happened to my brother and my wife. Okay, so I had to go to work in Italy in 2021, and because I hadn't decided to take the vaccine, I had to take a test. So I had to take a test, and I remember, the cert after you take a test was only valid for 3 or 4 days. It allowed you to travel. And I came back from working in Italy in 2021, and I decided to do the Camino with Christopher in 2021 for a month, taking a month off work. And I remember Christopher and myself went down to the pharmacy here in Ballina to get a test to allow us to travel to Spain on the Camino in 2021. And we came out of the pharmacy with our certs, tested negative for COVID. We went into a coffee shop in Ballina to get a coffee, and they wouldn't serve us because we weren't vaccinated. The legislation at the time was you needed to be vaccinated in order to be served in a restaurant. And I said, well, look, I just came from a pharmacy literally 30 minutes ago, tested negative for COVID. I have a cert here. It's going to allow me to travel tomorrow, but you won't serve me. I said, well, this is the legislation. I said, okay. I've never gone back to that coffee shop since in Ballina, but I vividly remember that. But the worst thing was, a few months later, Christmas, my son wanted to go to the cinema. And in order to go to the cinema in Ballina, you needed to buy the ticket with your credit card. And I said, I couldn't give Christopher cash to go and buy yourself a ticket and go to the cinema. I needed to go down and buy a ticket. Anyway, I go down to the cinema. I said, look, I'm buying a ticket for my son who's underage to go to the cinema. I said, we need your COVID cert to buy the ticket. And I said, but I'm not going to the cinema. I'm buying a ticket for my son. Like, I couldn't give him cash to go to the cinema. I needed to buy it with a credit card. Yeah, but the law in place at the time was we cannot sell you a ticket in the cinema unless you have a vaccination cert. So my son couldn't go to the cinema because his parent wasn't vaccinated. I kid you not. That was the legislation in place at the time in Ireland. And my son was really, really upset. Really, really upset. And I said, look, there's nothing I can do. I'm not going to get a vaccine. And the kids were saying, but like, how can we live like this? I said, well, this is the regime we're under. Do you not understand? In Germany in the 1930s, when they exterminated all people with Down syndrome, there was this, people with disabilities and Down syndrome were all killed off in Nazi Germany. It didn't happen from one day to the next. It was a slow increment and this COVID regime was a slow increment of what? And again, to be clear, I'm not anti anything. I was signed up to take the thing. I had actually signed up to take, and the only reason I didn't take it was because of my wife's problems. My brother's problems as well. She wasn't, if somebody takes a medication and they're not well, and they have a big black bruise on their arm, it should ask you, okay, like, she's not well. She's not well. She's not well. She had ringing in her ears for a good while, like she was just not well. If you take any medication and you're not well after that medication, the doctor will probably say, don't take that medication. My son we gave him an antibiotic when he was a child, and he came out with a rash all over him, and they said, "Well, he's allergic to penicillin." Well, you don't give the medication again, simple as. And yet, during COVID, we were not allowed to talk about the uh, effects in this. Anyway, that was my experience with in Ireland with this the utter totalitarian regime that was mandated down. Thankfully, we just went up to Northern Ireland because they had different laws and stuff up there. In 20, I remember in 2020 at Christmas we went to mass with the SSPX in Athlone because there was no mass. You couldn't go to mass at Christmas, and we're all packed into this church in Athlone, and nobody had masks on. And it was just surreal to think it was a bit of normality in this world. It was just you know a bit of normality, because you go to another chapel and people were all socially distanced and they wouldn't even look at you, and you know communion was, they're wiping down everything with alcohol, and it was just like, what's going on here? What's going on here? And anyway, I'm just recording this video so you just have a historical view, and I'm really asking the church to think about this. If this happens again, will you act in the same way? Will you fire bishops? I really concerned me when the Pope fired that Puerto Rican bishop because of his stance on the vaccines. I said, hold on, Holy Father. So you've put all of your eggs in one basket here. And, bishops were, look at this guy. We better keep quiet. We better tiptoe around it. The church became the religious affairs department of Pfizer. The church became the religious affairs department of the WHO. That's what the church became. They gave the guidance, we implement the guidance. If they say we have to take it, we take it. That's what happened. That's really what happened, guys. Think about it. During COVID, there is a priest, an ex-priest, an ex-Legionary of Christ priest who was a seminarian with me. He got ordained. Then he got laicized. He left the priesthood and he got married. And he had 4 kids living in Mexico. So an ex-priest with 4 kids living in Mexico. And he saw in Mexico people dying without last rites. People dying in hospitals without last rites. Not just from COVID, but from other things. You might have a heart attack. It wasn't just COVID that people were dying from during COVID era. You could have died, but the restrictions were that the priests at the time, weren't giving last rites. And under the law in the church, an ex-priest is allowed to give confession and last rites in extremis if there's no other priest available. So he said, I'm going to go and give the last rites. If the priest won't bother, I'll do it. And he did. A man who has 4 kids, married, 4 kids, going to give the last rites in hospitals in Mexico because priests wouldn't bother. And I was kind of wondering what type of priests we have today. You're so afraid you won't be ministers, But anyway, the whole thing was crazy. I'm just going to read out some of the comments here. What happened, Robert? This happened to me in Duns. An employee refused me a cup of tea in my own country. Yeah. God bless you, and for God bless her, she was only following orders. And others, yes, had a jag, had got COVID, and that's very true. The thing is, we weren't allowed to talk about this. Hopefully, with the appointment of Kennedy, the media will finally allow us to talk on this platform, because you could see me go offline for a week, that they'll take this down because you're going against our guidelines. Our guidelines are this, our guidelines are that. Well, so be it. I'll just publish this on another platform. We should be allowed to have free exchange of facts. If your wife gets sick after she takes a treatment and she's not well, you should be able to talk about this And in the normal course of events, when you take a medication and you have a reaction, you don't go back and take the same medication again. But that's what happened during COVID. People were having serious problems after they got the shot, and they went back and got another shot. Think about it, guys. Think about it. Have you ever taken any other medication, had a reaction, and then the doctor says, "Do you know what? Go back and take it again." like, 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 it's bonkers. It's beyond bonkers, guys, what happened. And you just weren't talk about it. And then when we spoke about, oh no, you're conspiracy, you're right wing, you're this, you're that. No, I'm not right wing, I'm not conspiracy, I'm not anti-vaccine because I did sign up for it. The reality is I didn't take it because of what happened to my wife, what happened to my brother. And there were employees of Pfizer, and we're going to be very cautious what I say here on YouTube because employees of Pfizer wouldn't take it themselves and wouldn't let their family take it because they told me. I can't say very much here because, uh, my links there, and not to expose them, but you know, internal employees were telling us, no, don't take it. I remember being at a funeral during COVID, and somebody trying to protect their identity here says, "Oh, we're not taking it. We're not taking it." And I said, "Wow, and you work for Pfizer?" "Yeah." "Well, we're not taking it." And then I said to them, "But weren't you given the option for the vaccine? You were all employees." "Yeah, that's just a news story. We're not taking it." I mean, guys, think about it. And the Pope was mandating his employees to take it. He was firing Swiss guards. And then he's sending a letter to uh, American bishops, meditate on the Good Samaritan. Do as I say, but not as I did. Bishop there in Puerto Rico, well, no Good Samaritan treatment for you. Fired. Swiss bishop, Swiss guards come to work for me. You don't want to take this global medication. Fired. Not respecting your conscience here. Catechism of the Catholic Church, conscience. Read it. Read it. The Pope spoke so much about respect for conscience, and yet when somebody in good conscience after has said, "Look, I don't want to take this. I've been infected already. I've come through it. I really don't see the need for taking a vaccine." No, fired. And we weren't allowed to talk about this. That's just my thoughts on it. I'm just going to go back and read through some comments here. Yeah, that's why they'll remove it. I guarantee you, guys. I don't know where Google is going with their guidelines. I guarantee you they'll probably remove it. But like, if we cannot have, and again, I am offering you my. We weren't allowed to do videos like this. I'm offering you a historical reflection on what happened. I'm just relating what happened. I'm not, as I said, I signed up to take the Pfizer vaccine. I did. And if my wife hadn't gotten sick, I probably would have taken it because I was traveling at the time. And I said, look, this will be convenient for me. I'll be able to travel. And two friends of mine had died, not friends, but peers that had been in the Legionaries of Christ, two priests in Mexico had died. So it wasn't like I wasn't conscious of the problems and the reality of this illness. I didn't dismiss it. I am relating, I had to balance it up. I'm a father with kids. People I know are dying from this illness. Maybe I should get vaccinated, etc., etc. My wife gets vaccinated. She gets ill. And I said, hold on a second. Do I or don't I? She's not very well. She's saying, look, Robert, don't take it. So it's not like do people understand? I'm not I'm not anti anything here. I'm just relating what happened, guys. We weren't allowed to talk about what happened during COVID, especially when you had been infected with COVID and you were then being told, oh, you need to get vaccinated. Like, what other disease do you need to get vaccinated for after you've just had the disease? I mean, they were saying after 6 months. I said, well, look, we'll have a rolling 6 months vaccination program for this thing. I can't, like, our life is going to be dictated by getting a treatment every 6 months to get a cert to allow us to exist. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. It was a big pharma, big money regime. Simple as. That's it. Big pharma, big money. But and I just have to to reflect on this, because the church played a pivotal role in the global dictatorship. Did. And it divided the church. Thankfully in Ireland, we continue to have mass. Can't say where, but like about 20 priests continue to say mass, during COVID. So we continue to have mass, underground mass. So the underground church was vibrant. It was beautiful. We had the best homilies during COVID. We had the best masses during COVID. No masks, no social distancing, none of this. We continue to live as normal. It divided the church really, and we won't forget the priests that stood with us during COVID and the priests that ran off afraid. How much faith do they have in Christ that you were so afraid? Elderly priests, I'm really afraid that I might die of COVID. I mean, well, okay, you might. They're so afraid of death that they were afraid to live. It is interesting. It really is interesting. But like again, yeah. Australia experienced medical miracle 2 years plus straight. Not a single case of influenza, but everyone did get COVID. That's true. I mean, in some countries, Australia and Canada, they had really worse. Uh, we remember the truckers and so forth. It was very sad. But anyway, I've had worse hangovers than COVID. Yeah, I can imagine. But look, look, I'm doing this video, as I said, to put it on the record, just to put it out there. The Pope is asking us to meditate on the Good Samaritan, and yet we didn't receive that same understanding during COVID from the Pope. The Pope once has his eyes fixed on JD Vance on Ordo Amoris. He issued a letter against a Catholic. It's really interesting, guys. Here, no sooner the vice president, the Catholic vice president, is no sooner in the office than he gets his own letter. He gets a response from the Pope. This is unprecedented. Unprecedented, guys. He'll do deals with China, which has concentration camps for Muslims who don't conform with the Sinonization of China. There are camps there. I mean, you have some of the worst abuses of human rights in China. And the Vatican will do a deal with China, with the Chinese Patriotic Church, and allow the Chinese government to have a say in the nomination of bishops, which Cardinal Zen has criticized. So the Pope will do a deal with a country which has some of the worst abuses of human rights. And yet a country who has decided to have an immigration policy that is less strict than Australia and New Zealand. I mean, America's immigration policy is less strict than Australia and New Zealand. So a country which has the right to have an immigration policy. And if you're going to have a policy, you might as well implement it. So America's gone down the route, okay, well, this is our immigration policy and we're going to implement it. And the Pope sends a letter, yada, yada, yada. And yet the Pope fired his own employees because, in good conscience, they didn't want to take a treatment. That is the fact. They couldn't speak out. They couldn't say anything. But like, it's a big deal for a Swiss man to be able to serve in the Vatican. It's not. I don't think people realize. And then for them to be fired because they didn't want to take the COVID vaccine. But I think people need to realize, the situation we're in. The Pope overstepped a boundary here. He used his authority for the wrong end. Seriously. He has turned Catholic bishops into papal secretaries. You need to implement what I say. You don't have the ability to voice your own opinion anymore. If you have an opinion about this vaccine, you cannot voice it openly because you're breaking communion with the Episcopal Conference. There is one policy in the church, and that's it. So you're not allowed to have another voice. And if you have, you're gone. So that Puerto Rican bishop, gone. Do people understand what the Pope has done? He has destroyed the church with obedience. Destroyed in the sense that destroyed the ability to have an open discussion on this. During COVID, he did that. And there were several bishops that had concerns about the vaccine. Legitimate concern. Like I had concern. Your wife is sick after you've taken it. Think about it, guys. Just think about it logically. You take a treatment and you get sick. The normal course of events is your doctor will say you don't take it anymore. Normal course of events. If you take a treatment and you're experiencing some of the rare side effects, you don't go back and take it again. And yet people were going back and taking the second shot after getting ill from the first one. And then if you spoke about this, no, it's conspiracy. No, it's rare. Well, how rare? How rare? My brother is ill and my wife is ill after taking the shots. It's not rare in my family. When people were dying from it afterwards because of clots and so forth. There was a priest actually in the States, Father Looney. I think his name is Father Edward Looney, and he did a video on YouTube about getting myocarditis or a heart problem after the vaccine. And he was just relating, this is what happened to me. What's the problem with that? And again, I haven't done these videos in a while, but anyway, I'm surprised people aren't angry, but I think they are still asleep. I mean, there's a big factor of pride in not to be able to admit you're wrong. And I think it'll come out in years to come. They might take down this video and I might put something else up in a week's time. I might just download it afterwards to keep it safe. And then if it does go, if you don't see me on this platform for a week, you'll know that the masters of B that control what we can say have taken it down. But like if we're not allowed to have a free exchange of ideas, how is this world ever going to progress? And I say a free exchange of ideas. You take a medication, it makes you sick. You should be able to speak about that. My wife took a medication, it made her sick. My brother took a medication, it made him sick. And have a discussion. But no, there was no discussion allowed. Seriously. First time in history, we had a medication that was 100% safe with zero side effects. Seemingly. That we had to take, even though we had the illness, it was there to prevent. Strange. Anyway, does anyone get vaccinated after they've had chicken pox? Why would you? You had chicken pox. You're immune. Anyway, God uses all sorts. Even the anti-pope served a purpose. Yeah. The womanizing idolater King David and King Solomon both were used for God's glory. Bergoglio is not an issue. Make it work out. Indeed, that could be the case. You know, you know, Pope Francis could turn out to be pivotal in the history of the church for many reasons that we don't know. You know, but I think, I've had an experience in the church that, being a religious for 9 years, having lived through the Father Martial saga, you don't understand my people sometimes fail to understand my perspective in the church, in the sense that we were sold a lie in the church. We were sold a lie. We were literally sold a lie. We were given a fictionalized history of the life of Father Martial. And we held him up there as an idol, as a living saint. He would be meeting with the Pope, and he would have the support of the cardinals, and we would go to the Vatican, and the Pope would meet with us, etc., etc. So after that experience, you kind of, to take a step back, and again, I really did lose my faith for about 10 years after the Legions of Christ. I said, drifted away, became minimal practicing Catholic. Had really no impact on my life until, I came back to the faith. And I think God uses this to teach us a lesson. He's using all of this to teach us a lesson. On the one hand, he's real, he's there, he's alive, he's working, he's active. But on the other side, you have the reality of Judas, of sin, of corruption in the church. And it should be a lesson for us. I I I have been a lot more cautious since I've got older. When people say, "Are you going to this guy or this event or this?" I've come to the stage in life. Adoration and rosary are really where I stick myself. I'm not really pulled to go anywhere else anymore. And I find a lot of fruits in adoration and rosary, and that's really where I've stuck myself. I don't get too much involved, but anyway, this is where we go. But as Pope John Paul II sadly was manipulated by people, which he was. Cardinal Ratzinger brought a dossier to John Paul II in the 1990s, late 1990s, about Father Martial, and Sodano and others, swayed the Pope another way. The Pope was manipulated. That's simply it. And Pope Francis was manipulated again. And I suppose if we don't talk about this problem, how is the church supposed to learn? The church has one mission, which is to help you get to heaven, the salvation of souls. That is one mission. Now, if the church is doing its mission, then, which is union with God, the other mission, the care of the poor, which is, part of the mission of the church, the fruits will come. But the church is failing in its mission at the moment, and they're struggling to say, well, why aren't we doing more? Why aren't people helping? Why the Pope is issuing a letter to the American bishops, and he's forgetting that most American Catholics are not listening to the Pope. They're simply not. Because his message is falling on deaf ears. His moral authority is plummeting, and it did, and during COVID, and that happened because he's being manipulated by the wrong people. He's been Who are the people that have his ear? And I tell you, cardinals, bishops, priests, nuncios, a lot of them have concerns. They will say this, but they won't speak out. A lot of clergy have concerns. A lot of the hierarchy have concerns, but they will not speak out. And just to kind of draw you into an understanding here, you have the likes of Father James Martin in the church. Okay, Father James Martin, and promoting his agenda. Uh, you know, as soon as Fiducia Supplicans came out, lights, camera, action, New York Times, get yourself to hold hands, take a picture. I'll go down in history as the first priest to bless these unions. Oh, I'm not blessing the union, I'm blessing two people individually. We are born this way. We can't change. That's the way we are. I'm born and I get angry. I have lots of faults, and that's the way we are. You could be angry, you could be drawn to many things. I just hate people that I don't like. I don't like these people. Our we have natural inclinations. That's the way we're born. An eye for an eye. You hit me, I'm going to hit you back. That's our natural. And yet Christ is asking us to be transformed, to change. Either the universal call to holiness is a universal call to transformation for all of us, or we're all born the way we are. And you're a section of humanity. We can't say anything to you about change. Like, guys, do we see the problems here in the church? And it's not to single out some people, but the universal call to holiness is a universal call to transformation. And we are all called to be transformed. We all have parts of our life that need to be transformed. Universal call to holiness means a universal call to transformation. To stop acting in one way and start acting in another way. Simple as. That's it. Nuts and bolts. We stop acting the way our fallen nature calls us to act, and start acting the way Christ is calling us to act. And today in the church we are confused. Yeah, we don't want to call you to conversion anymore. Convert when you have time. People don't see the problem in the faith today is this missed opportunity that the church is missing here. Could you do a video on Father Dennis Fahy? I've no idea who he is. Let me see. Is there any other questions there you have for me? A bishop in Nigeria left his church opened, and the parishioners could receive on the tongue. Yeah, I mean, like during COVID, they kept having masses. In Poland, they kept having masses. The Polish bishops put on more masses during COVID. In Sweden, where I had gone to mass once in Gothenburg in Sweden, I was following the webcam in Sweden, and they continued to have mass during COVID in Sweden. I don't know what came over the church, really. I just think they went bonkers, really. The Orthodox, they continued to give communion with the spoon, in many places. It just it's interesting. But look, I'm just relating here personal experience. Keep it on the record. If YouTube wants to take it down, so be it. But I think after 5 years, we should be able to talk about what happened. A free exchange of ideas, or if we're not allowed to have this free exchange of ideas, don't come at us with synodality. Oh yeah, we're synodal, we're listening, we're Don't come at us with synodality if we're not allowed to have a free exchange of ideas in the church. Anyway, I'm going to end it here. It's at 50 minute 50. If you have any other questions, you just put them there. I might be able to respond. But question here: who is the young man in Mark entering into the sepulchre? They saw a young man sitting on the right hand, clothed in a long white garments, and they were frightened. Jesus ancient. I'm not sure. During COVID, went out way into country. Most places I've I've ever had mass, it was a grace. I mean, I think for COVID, I mean, for me, it was a very positive experience. COVID, for me, it was a positive experience because I think a lot of good from personally. I had, as I said, I continued to travel all during COVID, go to mass all during COVID, confession all during COVID. I wasn't afraid, and we had great time. Other people just were at home afraid, and they were listening to the media. I turned off RT. I haven't turned on the television. I haven't turned on Irish news since 2018. I turned off the TV. That's simply it. What's the point? And it was a constant. Negativity, but like that was what happened. Anyway, look, I'm gonna end it here, and he was an Irish priest in America, maybe, but as I said, I don't know much about him at all, so I can't. Father Fry, I can't. I don't follow what he did. Anyway, God bless you. Take care. Bye bye.